Hello and welcome to another episode of Showcasing North Leeds, where I'm on a mission to find all the businesses in North Leeds and beyond and put them on this podcast so everyone can find out about them as well. And I'm delighted to be joined by Leah from My Law Solicitors. It's hard to say when you've got a lisp, but yeah, I'll give it a go. Please do, first of all, tell us, Leah, what it is that you do so everyone knows who's watching.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. So My Law Solicitors, me and my business partner set this up about 18 months ago. And essentially we are an employment law HR firm. We offer retainer packages to business to help them kind of, we tend to target SMEs, and it's because what we often find is that actually SMEs, you don't need a full-time HR director, you don't need somebody in the business all the time, but what you do need still is that external support, and we offer that.
Yeah.
Different packages, different options available. You know, you don't even have to have a retainer, it's just call me, can you do a contract, can you do this? But for us, it's just about supporting employers.
So what is the difference between a HR consultant and an employment solicitor?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
So on the ground, it might not look like there's much difference, but essentially as a solicitor, our training will vary as well in terms of solicitor and HR. I would say that HRs they focus more kind of on the strategic side as well, in terms of they might come in and look at your people and how you deal with them. For me, it's more about supporting the business, the employer. What do you want to achieve from this? Let's make your business the best business. Let's retain that talent that you've got, and let's help grow your business as well, but grow it in a way that's legal. We're making sure we're complying with employment laws. But then, of course, if things ever kind of get a little bit tense and, tribunal claims, ACAS, things like that, obviously got the training to deal with that. And if we do end up in a tribunal, I'm there, I can help, we can do that.
Okay. And then I always find this really interesting because I always say you don't know what you don't know. And people will think that they don't need someone like yourself because it's fine, they've got friends, they've got family, they've got one person who's employed, and it's like whatever.
Yeah.
What are common things that people need to understand is the reason why they need someone like yourself in their corner?
So I've recently had it not that long ago. Somebody came to me, a new inquiry, and just said, I've set this business up, Leah, can I have some contracts? Yeah, not a problem. When are you thinking of taking on your first employee? I've got 10. I said, that's fine. When are they all due to start? No, they started 4 years ago, Leah. Right, okay, well, we need to get some contracts in place then, because the law's recently changed as well, and having a contract now, you need it from day one. So the day that employee walks in here to do their training, they need to have a contract written down. And to be honest, a lot of employees now as well, they won't accept any offers without seeing a contract. So It's just good to know where to go and where to get one. But with that being said, and it being a day one right, it's so important that you have that contract immediately.
Right.
Really important.
Okay. And you mentioned to me before that there's the government have a contract. If you've not given someone a physical contract to sign, and the government have got something, and you can't make alterations?
Yeah, so in theory, if I employed you and you worked for me and I gave you a set salary, I gave you set holidays, set hours, and I didn't give you a physical document, then you might say to me, well, Leah, I haven't got a contract. You have, the law will imply one for you.
Right.
So it will be, you earn X amount, you have 28 days holiday, if that's what you've been getting. So it looks at kind of the reality of the situation, rather than actually what physical documentation you've been given.
And there's been this thing, and I've heard it must be about 3 or 4 times this year. I've never heard it before. What's the 2-year thing?
Yeah. So a lot of employers would say, well, if they haven't been here 2 years, Leah, I can just sack them, right? It's not always the case. And whilst employees that have under 2 years do typically have less protection, there's a couple of caveats to that. And it's the caveats that are catching employers out as well, because again, it's that you hear this 2-year rule and you must think, they've not got 2 years, and that's fine. If I need to sack them, that's okay. And for example, discrimination's a really big one. And the protected characteristics for discrimination, race, gender, sex, pregnancy, maternity, there's 9 of them. And actually, if somebody falls within that category, you just need to be taking a little bit of extra care with them in terms of actually, why are you dismissing them? You almost need me sat on your shoulder saying, but why are you doing it? And if it's got anything to do with that, You need to be very careful, and that's where we need to start treading carefully. But there's also other elements to this of automatic unfair dismissal of certain claims as well, where if you dismiss somebody, depending on the reason, it can be automatically unfair again, which means forget the 2-year rule, that's out the window. So it's just employers need to be very careful and cautious how they go about it.
And understand what can happen. So the 2-year thing is different to probation then, essentially, but people are assuming that it's almost the same when it's not.
Yeah. So I would say probationary periods are a myth. You put them in contracts, and it's typically to assess the suitability of a candidate for the role, see whether they're a good fit for the company. Now, they can have their use and their benefit, because as well, if an employee thinks, oh, I'm on probation, I've got to be really good, but why should they just be really good during that 3-week window, 3-month window? You know, you want them to act how they're going to act, forever throughout their employment. And all that really varies during the probationary period is the amount of notice that either party may be required to give.
Right, okay.
So it might be 1 week during your probationary period, and then it might be 3 months or 1 month once you've passed your probationary period. But people think, oh, they're in the probationary period, like I can still just sack them. No, you can't. Again, I'm not saying you can't, but what you need to look at is, why are you sacking them? Why are you dismissing them from the company? And again, if it falls under any of them protected characteristics or any of the automatic unfair claims, you've got to be really careful with that. So don't just think because an employee is in the probationary period, you're completely fine to do whatever you want.
So I'm kind of putting you in a spot, and I'm not, because you'll know this, but if you've got someone who joins a company, they're with you for a month, let's just say, in probation, and then they fall pregnant, and you're like, don't want them because they're gonna be on maternity leave. What you wouldn't be able to just say to them, right, I'm getting rid of you. Well, you can't say I'm getting rid of you because you're pregnant, of course, but that would be one of the protected characteristics. So it's not as easy as just saying I'm getting right. Okay. No,
and that's because I work with SMEs. It is a struggle, situations like that, because SMEs, there's certain reliefs that a small employer can claim as well in terms of maternity pay. But it's not as simple as, they're going to get pregnant, they're going to go off, and we're going to pay them. Now, absolutely, women that have children need to be supported in the workplace. I've got 2 children myself. We do need to be supported. But at the same time, employers need to be supported in that sense as well, because if you have an all-female workforce, 3 of them fall pregnant at the same time, it's going to impact your business. And I feel like the law looks after the employees. There's not much protection there for employers. And that's why, no, we absolutely couldn't say we're sacking you because you're pregnant. Absolutely not. And, that's, if employers are doing that, it's horrendous practice. But what we need to look at is actually, are there other alternatives to this? How can we work with the employee to actually achieve an outcome that's beneficial for both you as the employer and beneficial for them as the employee?
That makes sense. Okay. And then, from this point of view then, is there anything that people should be worried about if someone's self-employed as well? If they bring on somebody and that person is completely self-employed, so and they've got their own company, they work for your company like a consultant almost, I suppose. Anything in there that needs to be worried about with them?
So I've had this quite recently actually. I'm working on a case at the moment, and our hearing it's scheduled for the start of April in the tribunal, because this individual themselves was engaged on a self-employed basis. They were just offering their services to the company, they were invoicing the company, and that's how the relationship started. But that was 4 years ago. And then as the relationships developed, they've become more integrated into the business. They've started to be involved in quite senior meetings as well. And there's been a couple of other things, and nobody's kind of twigged or picked up on the fact that their employment status may have changed and they're no longer self-employed.
Right.
And they've actually become either a worker or an employee. There's not too much difference between an employee and a worker, albeit the rights that you're afforded are different.
Employee and a worker, right.
Yeah, so essentially if you don't meet the high threshold that is there for an employee, we would deem you to be a worker.
What's the high threshold?
So for instance, to be an employee, there's kind of 3 tests that you typically look at. It's called the irreducible minimum, and it's personal service. So are you giving your service and you can't send a substitute? Could you send somebody else to work to do your job? Probably not.
No.
And there's a level of control there as well. So who's providing the equipment for you? Who's telling you what hours to work? And if that's kind of watered down in that sense as to, well, you work when you want, do whatever you want, actually maybe you are more of a worker.
Right.
It will really depend on the specific situation. And even, it's been tried and tested in the courts, and even the courts have kind of struggled to grapple with all these different meanings. And that's why I think employers are falling foul of it, because it's just not, nobody can give a definitive answer as to that's what you are. And ultimately, when you end up in a tribunal like this, it's because you're arguing. One side saying they're self-employed, one side saying they're an employee. Nobody can come to a decision. The only person that can make that decision will be a judge in the employment tribunal.
But even if, so, yeah, because you have an automatic contract, don't you? So I'm thinking, if you're self-employed, how can you then be mistaken for an employee?
So you may have heard about Uber, and this has been in the news about Uber.
A little bit, but not because of the drivers and yeah.
And this was all essentially what Uber was about, and it's about looking at the reality of the situation. So the documentation on itself, it's telling, but it's not going to tell you the whole truth. And the judge isn't going to sit there and go, right, you've got that contract, that's what that says, so let's believe that. They'll actually look at the reality of what factors are in play and how that person's treated. So in my case, my client was very much integrated into the business. He attended meetings. He actually got holiday pay as well, which if he wasn't an employee, should he have got holiday pay? No, shouldn't. So there's little things like that come into play, but it's really important to get it right, because what's then happened in this case, for instance, is that the individual has been dismissed. Now they're saying, well, we don't need to follow a fair process or give any fair reason. He's not an employee, but we're saying, well, he is. So you've actually unfairly dismissed him, and that entitles him to make a claim. So it can actually cost you quite a lot if you get the status of your employee wrong as well. So really important.
So these are all reasons why people need to have someone like you in the corner to understand. Yeah. Even if they've got someone that's self-employed, they're thinking it's a self-employed basis. Yeah,
and at My Law Solicitors, what we do, we would come in and do almost an audit. So initially on day 1, I'd look at kind of how you've got everything set out, who you've got employed or not employed, as might be the case, and have a little look at that. And then actually what I'll keep doing is keep touching base with you. I'd like to think that you'll call me regularly. And if we think anything's changing or developing and we think, we're not sure about their status now, we'd flag this up to you and have a chat with you and say, look, these are the risks now, we would suggest this, to obviously try and save you being in an employment tribunal and potentially paying out thousands.
You've got to be so careful with everything, don't you? I was saying, so we had someone on before who was a HR consultant, and I was saying that just having someone like you in their corner gives you peace of mind, because you're doing your day-to-day job or doing what you do, and you don't have time to study the law to understand what happens in employment. So you've got someone like yourself to be able to ask the questions. I'm going to do this. Should I? Can I? What should I do? But it's important to ask you beforehand before they do anything. So, okay.
And you as a business owner as well, you're already wearing 5 different hats.
Yeah.
Let's not throw another one on that, and you're spinning all these plates. It's actually, if somebody can take that worry and that pressure, and especially a worry that could cost you as a business quite a lot of money, but it's also reputation. We talked about Uber, and you hear about all these cases, and you think, might think, oh, they're not a great employer. Oh, I don't want to work for them because they did this or because they discriminated. And it is about protecting your reputation as well and retaining the top talent.
Yeah, for sure. Right, okay. Is there anything that I've not asked you that I should have asked you?
No, I don't. I think we've covered quite a bit there. I think I've given a lecture on employment law. But no, I think that's everything.
Well, how is it that people find you then?
LinkedIn, socials, our website at My Law Solicitors. If you just type that in, we'll straight away appear. But we're usually all over socials as well. I tend not to do Instagram so much. That's probably me, because I'm still learning the ropes of Instagram. I'm still not great with it. But yeah, LinkedIn, Facebook, or search on the website.
Okay, well, thank you for
Thank you.
delivering that insight as well at the same time. Thank you everyone for listening, and obviously do get in touch if you do need any help. And please do like, comment, share and subscribe, as I keep saying, and reviewing the podcast as well, because it helps us get it further out to everybody to understand and find out more about these businesses. So see you guys in the next episode.